Okay, let's go ahead and walk you guys through the process, once again, of taking all your scans that you've done and assembling them together into one complete animation. So I'm actually going to just skip over the part where we discussed in class how to actually go about doing the scans, and we'll just jump into processing the scans that we now have. So if I toggle over here to the Finder, and we take a look at these scans right here, you can see that as a result of scanning them, that they've actually come in, rotated clockwise 90 degrees. We actually want to have these rotated negative 90 or counterclockwise. So let's go ahead and write an action in Photoshop and do an automated batch render and fix the rotation of all of these in one go. So one of the easiest ways to do this is I'll just go ahead and take one of the files and I'll open it up right here in Photoshop. Now you'd want to click on Window and come down and select your action so that it opens up right over here. And in this action menu, you want to click on the icon that looks a lot like the new layer icon. If I click on that, it asks us to create a new action. I'll just go ahead and call this one Rotate Counterclockwise. Right, and we'll press record. Now from this moment, Photoshop is going to record everything that we do to this particular file. So I will click on Image, come down to Rotate Canvas, and choose 90 degrees counterclockwise. So you've rotated it to the proper orientation. Now that's all I necessarily need to do to process this particular file. So I'll come back over and press the stop icon. All right, and so we've stopped recording for this particular action. I'm going to close this, and I don't want to save it. The reason for that is because if I were to save this and then process this file along with all the rest, it would actually end up rotating it counterclockwise once again and putting it at the incorrect orientation. So to go ahead and do this batch render, we're going to click on File and come down to Automate and select Batch, or this batch process. I apologize, I keep calling it a batch render. You want to select the action, all right, that we want. So it's rotate counterclockwise. We want the source to be a folder. We want to choose the location of the folder that contains the files that we need to apply this action to in mass. So I'll go ahead and select my Demo2 folder, press choose, and then for the destination, we just simply want it to be save and close. And I'm going to go ahead and press OK, and we'll let Photoshop do its thing. All right, now if we come over to the Finder and we take a look at these, each one should be at the proper orientation and ready for us to take into Premiere. All right, so let's just hop over to Premiere now. Here's a little welcome dialog. We'll go ahead and just create a new project. All right, we can name it whatever we want. We'll call this one, how about Figurative Motion Study. We'll press OK. All right, and then up opens Premiere. Now let's just run through the user interface real fast. Up here in this area, this is kind of a multi-purpose window. Right here, we can, in the default view, this is set up to preview the files that we import. You can click on this tab if there's effects or you need to do any scaling or repositioning or anything. You can do that through the effects controls, the audio mixer. I don't use that much, but I'm assuming it allows you to be able to probably run some audio effects or the levels, and then metadata. So if there's any meta tagging with any of the files that you're bringing into the project, this is where that metadata will appear. All right, just to the right of that, over in this area, this is our actual viewport. This is our workspace. So as we're editing things in our timeline, this is where we will be able to preview that project. All right, immediately below that, we have the timeline. There's currently nothing available right here. All right, no sequences. And then over here in this lower left-hand area, this is our asset bin. So whenever we're importing files into the program, this is where they're going to be organized. This is where we can go to be able to find them. So I will get started by double-clicking on the asset bin, and that's going to bring up my import dialog sequence. Now, I have the folder selected that contains the files that I want access to. What I'm going to do at this particular moment is only select, well, okay, only select and import the individual keyframes. Actually, let me back up on that real fast. I'll go ahead and delete this asset from the program. I'm actually going to go to my preferences real fast. I'll just go to General. All right, when that opens up, right here in General, all right, I apologize about that. I had to take that phone call. So coming right back here into our preferences, what we want to do is focus on the still image default duration. Currently, it's set to 2 frames, and meaning that is going to be like 1/12 of 1 second. What we want to do is we want to set this duration to 24 frames. All right, we'll go ahead and press OK, and as a result, when we import these keys, which now I'm going to try not to jump the gun. So A, and I'll hold down Command or Control, select keyframe B as well as C. When we import each of these, they will have a duration of 1 second, or 24 frames, based off of a playback rate of 24 frames per second. Okay, now real fast before I import these, let's just go ahead and re-review the naming convention that I've used. So each of my keys, I've given it an alphabetical naming system. Then each of the tweens, I've given it an alphanumeric system. So the tweens are A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, A6, and so on. And then in between B and C, B1, B2, B3, B4, and so on and so forth. I'd recommend that you do something similar in your own projects so that we have an easier time importing these files. So for the moment, I have just the keys selected. I'll go ahead and press import. Okay, and you can see them appear right down here in my asset bin. I'm going to double click on my asset bin again real fast. And this time I'm going to select A1. Now previously when we had just the key, whoops, don't want to re-import that. When we had just the key selected, or the key frame, the image sequence option was grayed out right here. We could not select that. Now if I select A1, we can turn that check mark on. And what it's going to do is, because we have this named in an alphanumeric sequence, it's going to bring all these files between A1 and A8, or in the case of your animations, it'll be A1 through A9, and it'll actually compress them down into one asset, one video asset. So let's import this real fast. Okay, now I can go ahead and take that A1, drag it up here into our preview area and press play, and you can see that we have one nice full comprehensive video. All right, so let's go ahead and double click again in our asset bin. I'll select B1, make sure that the image sequence checkbox is selected, and we'll press import. All right, and bring these over. All right, now the next thing that we need to do, we have these files that have been imported into the program. We need to create a sequence. A sequence to Premiere is sort of like a document is to Adobe Photoshop. Right? The sequence is where the timeline will be created. It's what we'll actually be dragging our assets into to edit and etc. So I'm going to create a new one by clicking on File, coming down to New, and selecting Sequence. All right, this brings up the new sequence settings. I'm just going to ignore the presets. I'm going to move right over to the center tab. This is the settings tab. And for the editing mode, I want to set that to custom. All right, this is going to give me the most options to be able to use with my particular project. Now for the time base, we don't want the 29.97 frames per second. That is more of a digital or broadcast frame rate for television. Generally speaking, film itself is processed at 24 frames per second. But now for the purpose of this particular animation, we're going to get the most bang for our buck if we actually have that down to 12 frames per second. So let's go ahead and select that. Now for the video size, let's go ahead and set this to match our document settings. So 500 by 500. And if you need to double check that, you could always come back over into Photoshop. I'll open up one of these images once again. And actually, just right here in the preview, you can see that it's 500 by 500. All right, that's something that I would have checked on a little earlier. All right, so make sure that these settings match our project. Okay, so I want the 12 frames per second. I have the correct frame size, the horizontal and vertical widths. And now the next thing I want to do is I probably want to set my pixel aspect ratio to square pixels. And this should match the scan settings from when I originally scanned the images. All right, so we'll go ahead and press OK. And you see it that it appears right down here in our timeline. All right, now a few other things that we want to do. So our sequence, you can see, has been added to our asset bin. It is set at 12 frames per second. But if we look at the image sequences that we've imported right here, their default frame rate is 29.97. If we were to take this and drag it over and attempt to watch it in our timeline, we would only see about every other or every third frame in that's actually part of this image sequence. So what I need to do is I will go ahead and select the A1 image sequence, and then I'll hold down Command or Control and simultaneously select the B1 image sequence. I'll right click on those, come down to Modify, and select Interpret Footage. Now in the Interpret Footage, we can actually reinterpret the frame rate of these particular image sequences. So we'll go ahead and select the Assume This Frame Rate, and we'll enter in a value of 12 for 12 frames per second, and we will press OK. All right, and now we should just be able to grab all of these assets, A, A1, B, B1, and C, and drag them over and drop them in my timeline. Okay. Now what this is going to say is, well, you'll probably end up seeing a warning like this. This clip does not match the sequence settings. Change the sequence to match the clip settings. No, we want to keep the existing sequence settings. All right, now I'll grab my little zoom tool and click on this a couple of times. I'll press Return on my keyboard to build a preview. All right, and there we go. We have our animation. Okay, now I've asked you guys to loop this a couple of times, so here's what I'm going to do. I'll go ahead and select all these individual assets on the timeline. You can tell they're selected because they'll be grayed out, and I will hit Command or Control C to copy that, and then I'll just paste them. Oops. So yeah, let me move these down into the video one layer. All right, so I pasted, I repasted the sequence after itself in the timeline, and I'll do that again. I want it to loop at least 3 times. Probably the best would be 5, just so that gives us an opportunity to really watch the motion. All right, now if I press return right here, it'll go through everything once again. And in the case of your particular sequences, the loop should be completed and come right back around. There should be a sequence of in-betweens between keyframe E and keyframe A. Right, but when everything's all edited together and working in your timeline, go ahead and click on File and come down to Export and select Media. Right, this will bring up the export settings. The format that you'll probably want to select is H.264. If you are on a PC, I'm not sure if this will be available to you or not. If you're on a PC, you'll probably have an option for Sorensen 3. That's also another nice codec. Or you could just try and export it out as a QuickTime itself. All right, so, but if you're rendering this on a Mac, go with an H.264. For the output name, I'll go ahead and just click on that and select where I would like to render this to. All right, and I'll go ahead and give this its name. So figurative motion study. You can name it whatever you want. I'll go ahead and hit save. All right, and then you probably won't have any audio, but if you do for some reason, make sure to have the export video and audio both selected. And then right down here in the video tab for the basic video settings, make sure to click match source so that we're rendering out at the proper dimensions, in this case 500 by 500, with the proper frame rate and the proper pixel aspect ratio. Okay, and now if everything's set up right here, we should just be able to hit export. Let it do its thing. I'll go ahead and come over here to the directory that we saved this in and watch it. All right, perfect. Now the last thing that you'll need to do is you'll need just to take this final video and upload it to either YouTube or Vimeo, and then copy the link to that video and submit that link through iLearn. All right, good luck, guys.